Today we'll be working in my book, The Story of Noah and His Family. And we have already done chapters 1, Great Evil Brings Great Destruction, and that sets the stage for why the reason for Noah's Ark. And chapter 2, Noah is to build the ark. We get the dimensions and how he's put to build it. And we went through chapter 3, which was the flood and all the things that happened during the flood. Now we're on chapter 4. The ark lands on Mount Ararat. So let's go ahead and get there. So there you go. The ark lands on Mount Ararat. Genesis 8, 1 through 19. The scripture goes, Genesis 8, 1. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark. And he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. Now the springs of the deep and the floodgates of heaven had been closed, and the rain had stopped falling from the sky. So what are the first 4 words of verse 1? First 4 words of verse 1 is, but God remembered Noah. And this actually gives a little bit of a wrong picture. God never forgot Noah, but he's now going to focus his attention on him and the ark. How did God get the waters to recede? He sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. Must have been some wind to move those waters, and it may have taken a little while. What water sources had been closed or stopped? The springs of the deep, which we see here in an illustration, closed up, and the floodgates of heaven stopped raining. So they were closed up, and the springs of the deep were closed up. Have you ever considered if the world was covered with water, where could the water go? Just like a bucket full of water, there has to be some place for that water to go to make it empty. Bible scholars believe this is when many of the mountain ranges and deep seas were created. Raise up the mountains and the water will follow like a river to the lowest point and then pool there. See Psalms 104, 6 through 9 below. Psalms 104, 6 through 9. You covered it with watery depths as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. But at your rebuke, the waters fled. At the sound of your thunder, they took to flight. They flowed over the mountains. They went down into the valleys, to the place you assigned for them. You set a boundary they cannot cross. Never again will they cover the earth. So that is what Bible scholars believe happened to the water, is that the earth all shifted so that there became pools of water rather than the water all over the earth. So scripture continues. The water receded steadily from the earth. At the end of 150 days, the water had gone down. On the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. The waters continued to recede until the 10th month, and on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. First, we have the time and days. How many days were they on the ark before the flood started? If you remember, it was 7 days. How many days did it rain? If you remember, it was 40 days and 40 nights. How long had the water flooded the earth? The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. Therefore, the total number of days are, you take 7 days plus 40 days plus 150 days, and you get 197 days. But we also have the time in months. Genesis 7:11, in the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, on that day, on the springs of the great deep, verse 4. And B, the waters continued to recede until the 10th month. And on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. So using a 30-day month, which we're just using it for approximation purposes, the number of total days using the second method. Using a 30-day month, the total number of days using the second month method is 223 days, or right. So why do you think there's a difference between 223 and 197? Well, there's a couple reasons for this. One, it is possible that since well, if it was used a Hebrews calendar, there would actually be more days different because their Hebrew calendar is based on the moon, not on like ours, which is based on the sun. Another possibility is it may not be counting some things. And I personally believe that they differ because the first method is perhaps not as accurate as the second method, or they were calculated from different starting and ending points. The second method has to deal with actual months and days, versus the first was just a general saying it this much for that and this much for this, but is there something missing on the first category? We don't really know the reason for the difference. So the scripture continues. After 40 days, Noah opened a window and he had made in the ark and sent out a raven, and it kept flying back and forth until the water had dried up from the earth. So now he's going to send two different types of birds, and we should be able to understand why he picked these birds and why two different types. How many more days did Noah wait before he sent out a raven? After 40 more days before he sent out the raven. And adding that to 2C from the prior page, we get 293 days total so far. And why a raven? A raven was probably used because a raven is a scavenger bird. Noah probably wanted to see whether it would return or would stay away from the ark, perhaps eating from the remnants of carcasses exposed as the waters receded or the land disappeared, or land appeared. So number 3, did God tell Noah to do this? We don't see any evidence that God told Noah to do this. It is interesting to me that Noah waits on God for everything, but this one time God didn't tell him what to do. I personally think someone of the family kept asking, when are we leaving? And so Noah obliged them by using the raven and later the dove to get some answers. After all, who would have thought that they would have been on the arks this long? Nobody. God never told them how long they'd be on the ark, and they're on the ark seems like forever at this point. So he may have done it to satisfy the curiosity of the other people on the ark. What did the raven do? The raven kept flying back and forth. So that is, and that they had no place to land. Therefore, does there seem to be any carcasses in the water? No, there doesn't appear to be any carcasses in the water. When did the raven stop flying back and forth? The raven will stop flying back and forth when the water had dried up from the earth. So instead of the sense that the raven comes back right away, he keeps flying back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so we never see him contained back right away. And he will do that until the water recedes, is dried up in the earth, which will take a little while. So even though the stories have a tendency to see that Raven come back into the ark, I don't know that he came back in. Why would a bird prefer to be confined versus just landing on top of the ark? So the scripture continues. Then he sent out a dove to see if the water had receded from the surface of the ground. The dove could find nowhere to perch because there was water over all the surface of the earth. So it returned to Noah in the ark. He reached out his hand and took the dove and brought it back to himself in the ark. So the dove actually does come back and comes back into the ark for safety. Why did Noah now send the dove? According to scripture, Noah sent the dove to see if the water had been receded from the surface of the ground. How can we tell that the dove was sent before the raven stopped returning? We can tell that the dove was sent before the raven stopped returning because the dove could find nowhere to perch because there was still water all over the earth. And yet the raven travels back and forth all the time. So at this point in time, the raven is circling and coming back to the ark because there was no land and no carcasses to feed off of. The dove returned because any surface that may be showing has not grown vegetation yet. So the different birds was Noah's way of discovering what was going on out in the world. Very astute, actually. What did Noah do with the dove when it came back? He reached out his hand and took the dove and brought it back to himself in the ark. Let's consider for a moment what Noah is trying to do with the raven and the dove. A, when his family got on the ark, was there any knowledge of how long they'd be on the ark? No, God never told them how long they would be on the ark. B, where is the window or covering on the ark? On the side or on the top? It's on the very top of the ark. Is it easy to see out from the ark? Not unless you're at the very top. So you can't see what was going on unless you're at the very top. There's no windows on the ark. So they probably didn't have as an easy time of seeing what was going on in the ark. So D, opinion. They had no cell phones, TVs, or radios connected to the local news channel, so that they had no way of knowing what is happening outside. No reports from anywhere or anyone. Also, although we know they landed on Mount Ararat, they did not know where they were. They were curious, so they used what they knew about the birds to give them some information. How would you decide what is happening in the world if you were on the ark? Well, I don't have this kind of information of different animals and what they can do, but this certainly seems logical to me. Figure out which animals can give you some information about what's going on. So this was good knowledge about the birds and what they were going to be able to tell them. And the dove more than likely is willing to come back, and the raven is more of a wilder creature and probably wasn't willing to come back inside the ark. So it's very good weather gauge, so to speak. So the scripture continues. Genesis 8:10. He waited 7 more days and again sent out the dove from the ark. When the dove returned to him in the evening, there in its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. Then Noah knew that the water had receded from the earth. He waited 7 more days and sent out the dove again, but this time it did not return to him. So you have to realize that there's a lot to have been done for a fresh olive leaf. Did the trees manage to survive the flood enough so that when the water receded, the tree still had olive leaves? I don't know. That just seems a lot to me. Did God already plant trees and have them grow up quickly? That might be more of the case here because that would take way too long, several years for a tree to grow from scratch to have olive leaves. So either it was a tree that managed to survive the flood and then start growing leaves again, or God planted and had the trees grow up quickly before they exited the ark. But anyway, the dove brought back an olive leaf, which means to Noah that things are receding on the earth. The flood is receding because there's actually land enough for for the dove to get an olive leaf. And then he waits another 7 more days, and the dove never comes back. And so, then he has places to stop and rest his feet. How much longer did Noah wait before trying again? Noah waited 7 more days. Add that to the number on page 2, number on question 2 on page 40, and what you get. Now, adding 7 more days, we now have a total of 270 days. What bird did he send out in Genesis 8:10? He sent out a dove. This time the dove returned with what? This time the dove returned with an olive leaf. And what would this olive leaf mean? I believe this olive leaf would mean that a full tree has grown enough to have leaves, or that a tree somehow survived the flood with leaves. How long did Noah wait again before sending the dove a third time? Noah waits another 7 days to send out the dove a third time. So that means Noah and his family have been on the ark how long? So if you add it to the number on question 2, they're on the ark for 277 days. What happened to the dove on this flight? On this flight, the dove never returns. And what would the dove not returning mean? It would mean that it found enough land to rest its feet and to start enjoying its freedom. We know the dove was first sent out when the raven was still flying to and fro. Since the dove did not return, what do you think has happened to the raven? Hmm. I believe the raven has finally stopped flying to and fro. It was flying to and fro until the water receded from the earth. It too has a place to land, so it is no longer flying to and fro either. So in the next scripture, Genesis 8:13. By the first day of the first month of Noah's 601st year, the waters had receded, dried up from the earth. Noah then removed the covering from the ark and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. By the 27th day of the second month, the earth was completely dry. So, what did Genesis 7:11 say was Noah's age, month and day of his age, that the flood started? So, he was 600 years of age in Genesis 7:11, and that it started at the second month of the 17th day of his 600th year that the flood started. What does Genesis 8:13 now say is Noah's age, month, and day that the water completely dried up? Now he's the 601st year and the 27th day of the second month. Therefore, how long from when the flood started to when the waters completely dried up? By this, from what the flood started to when it dried up was 313 days using a 30-day calendar. So if you use a 30-day calendar, it's 313 days. Of course, it may be a Hebrew calendar that they're using, or whatever calendar, because truthfully, the Hebrew calendar is not even going to be made until Passover. So Moses, when he's writing this, is probably using his Hebrew calendar of 28 days a month. But anyway, so we're roughly at roughly 313 days. Therefore, how long from when the flood started to when the waters dried up? The earth was completely dry on the 27th day of the second month of his 601st year. And what day was the earth completely dry? Oops, that was the answer to number 4. The earth was completely dry on the 27th day of the second month of his 601st year. And number 3, as I say, 313 days. So number 5. So how long was Noah, his family, and all the animals on the ark so far? Remember the 7 days they were on the ark before the flood started. So he's been on the ark for 382 days, 1 year plus 10 days between the flood starting in Genesis 8:14, because the 7 extra days they were on the ark, or if using a 30-day calendar, 377 days. So basically it's similar, 377, 382. It's similar, so we know it's at least over a year. So if the water has receded and they're seeing land, why have they not left the ark already? I believe they have not left the ark because Noah is waiting on God to tell him what to do next. And we see this waiting. He's waited on God all his life. And so we see this continual waiting before they leave the ark. So another opinion question. How do you think things are going on the ark at this point? Do you think they brought enough food? Are the animals and people getting restless? I would say they have brought enough food because God somehow would have made that happen. Are the animals and people getting restless? Yes, I would think so. Even though we talk about how the animals were probably vegetarians and how the animals were probably hibernating, they're probably getting awakened from their sleep too. Everybody's probably waiting impatiently to leave the ark. And yet Noah waits on God. So the scripture continues. Then God said to Noah, come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that moved along the ground, so that they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number on it. So Noah came out together with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives, all the animals and all the creatures that move along the ground, and all the birds, everything that moves on land came out of the ark, one kind after another. Pretty darn cool. So he waits on God, doesn't he? For God to say, come out of the ark. And so they come out and they're told to multiply on the earth and increase number on it. So they all came out, one kind after another, one type of animal after another. So then the questions on that, calculating the time of Noah's story. Number one, Genesis 6:3. How long did God give before he was going to flood the earth? God said he was going to give 120 years before he was going to flood the earth. Looking on page 2, if the flood was 656 years since creation, then subtracting 1 from 656, God gave this warning how many years since creation? 656 years minus 120. He gave the warning at year 1536 after creation. So calculating the time on the ark. Genesis 7:10. How long was Noah, his family, and animals on the ark before the flood started? They were on the ark 7 days before the flood started. This is what year, day, month of Noah's life. And based on Genesis 7:11, this is the 600th year of his life on the 17th day of the second month. How long did the rains fall? The rains fell for 40 days and 40 nights. The flood covers the earth for how long? The flood covers the earth for 150 days. What year, month, and day of Noah's 600th year? It was on the 17th day of the 7th month when the ark rested on Mount Ararat. And so now, figuring the difference using a 30-day calendar just for ease of calculations, the difference is 5 months or 150 days. But counting the days method, it ends up to 197 days. So approximately the same, 47 days different. Therefore, since both the time of Noah's life and the days shown for the flood have to be the same, what can we conclude about the rain and the days the flood covers the earth? The rain is included in the time of the flood covers the earth for how long. If you include it, you can end up with the same amount of days. So the flood, the rain falls, and then the flood covers the earth for how long? The flood covers the earth for 150 days. The rain fell for 40 days. So if 40 is included in the 150, you reduce the difference between the two categories, two groups. What month and day were the mountains visible? The tops of mountains were visible on the 10th day of the 10th month of the 600th year of Noah. What year, day, and month was the land completely dry? The day, year, month, and year the land was completely dry was year 601, the second month, 27 days. Therefore, how many days were everyone on the ark? The amount of days Noah and his family were on the ark was 1 year and 17 days, plus 7, or a total of 389 days using our 30-day calendar. And then correspondingly, if you do it by a 30-day calendar, it would be 377. So it's either 389 or 377. And it would go more with the 389 since it is a Hebrew calendar and not the Julian calendar. So now we get to the crossword for this page here. Okay, number 3. What mountains did the ark land on? Ararat, Ararat. Number 5. The second time the dove went out, it brought home an olive leaf. Olive leaf. 6. On the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains were visible. 7. What did God use to get the waters to recede? 7 is wind. Wind. Must have been a mighty wind, but wind. 9. What was the second bird that Noah sent out? It was the dove. Second bird was a dove. 11. The first time the dove could find nowhere to perch is a true word, perch, to return. So it returned to the ark. 1 down. What was the first bird that Noah sent out? He sent out a raven. Number 2, in Genesis 8:6, how many days after the mountaintops were visible did Noah send out the raven? 40 days. 40 days. And number 4, but God blanked Noah and all that were on the ark with him. God remembered, right? Yeah, remembered Noah and all that were on the ark with him. Number 8, who told Noah to come out of the ark? It would be God. And 10, how many times did Noah send out the dove? He sent out the dove a total of 3 times. So that's the end of this chapter. Have a good day.